Right, we're live.
Thanks, Alex. Welcome, everybody, to this week's Indexer office hours. First of all, I just want to apologize to all of our US friends that may have turned up an hour early for this week's meeting. We've been a victim of daylight savings time as I schedule on the UK time zone. I've already made a change to the forum post that sort of lists the detail of office hours so that it hooks into Pacific time instead. Since the rest of the world's going to change again, we might as well hook into Pacific time for the meetings. So the meetings will always be at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific time from now on. And just, if you're not in the US, you're going to have a daylight saving coming up in the next couple of weeks. It's the 28th of March for the UK, at which point the time slot will change slightly for you. Okay, so this week, I think we've got Ford for about 15 minutes. So I wanted to make sure that any questions where Ford would be the domain expert to comment on are up front today. And the first question that I see, the question around a new feature that looks like it's a pull request right now on the GitHub repo. Steak Machine, do you have a specific question, or you want to go over this specific pull request? Maybe, what's your objective here?
Just to understand the state, when it can be merged, so we can try it out. Or can we try this pair on testnet already?
You're certainly welcome to try that on testnet, but it should be merged this week into the main branch. And for everyone else that hasn't taken a look at that PR basically adds a step in the indexer agent reconciliation loop that will query the network subgraph. It'll find disputable allocation within their dispute period, and it will compare if your indexer has that subgraph. It'll grab a POI and compare it to the POI on chain and try to identify potential disputes.
So is this the start of building the fisherman process out, Ford?
This is, one of a bunch of moving parts along this arbitration process. So there's also a fisherman that will be able to check these disputes, as well as what we're calling a subgraph availability oracle, which will be constantly monitoring the network and making sure that subgraphs that are deployed are actually available on IPFS. And that's to prevent a specific set of potential attacks.
And do all of these new components, do they all sort of gravitate around the graph node, or do they gravitate around the indexer software, or are they sort of distinct pieces of software on their own?
They're each distinct pieces of software, and it's going to be a combination of adding to the indexer software so we can have decentralized checks, so you can all be checking against each other's data, as well as having some components that are originally hosted by EduNode and then are democratized so we can have them hosted by the community.
Got it. Excellent. Does anybody have any other questions around this pull request?
Yeah, will there already be any action if we found any bad data?
So there's a somewhat complicated answer to that. Right now, I believe the council will be responsible for putting out an arbitration charter. So in this initial phase, we'll be making sure that the software is working as expected. So we'll be working on testnet, as well as testing on mainnet. And so it's not going to be an immediate case of slashing effects happening, if that's kind of what the brunt of your question was.
Yeah, so for now, it's just kind of monitoring.
Correct.
How do you recommend we consume the data? Will there be like a Grafana dashboard with a table or something like that?
So this initial pass, it stores the data into the indexer database. So anytime your agent identifies a potential dispute, it'll store that in your DB, and there is an indexer CLI command, disputes get, that will list all those potential disputes for you on the command line, and then you can take that data and submit a dispute. So that's kind of the simple first implementation. I want to build out that indexer CLI command so you can filter the disputes, sort them in different ways, etc. But that data is just being stored in your Postgres database, so you are free to, query it there or build other tools on top of it. Just like our other software, we've tried to make it so it's easily integrated into your own tools.
Awesome, thanks, Ford. Where can we learn more about the subgraph availability oracle?
I believe we have an RFC that I can share with you there, but Leo has been working on that. I can get back to you guys after this meeting with some materials on that.
Awesome, thanks.
Great. Okay. There was one other question I saw. Well, I made this question myself at the end of the chat there, which maybe you can help me with, Ford. I've set a claim threshold on my agent at 50 GRT, and my assumption around this specific option was that it would allow me to avoid a situation where I generate a claim transaction for query fees that is, maybe, I don't know, 10 GRT, and it cost me, the equivalent of 30 GRT to actually make the transaction. But my understanding, from watching this and observing that I never actually seem to make any claims, is that threshold is on some kind of number that's maybe per epoch or per claim period. So I never actually hit that number, which I'm assuming epochs will reach that number, then it will make a claim. But it doesn't seem like it works that way. Are you able to expand on how this option works?
Yeah, so that query fee collected claim threshold that you put in, or if you use the default, basically what that is used in is the query that fetches all claimable allocations. So there's a filter on that query, and it's querying, so it's per allocation. So basically what happens is you're querying for all allocations that have a query fee collected greater than or equal to that threshold. And then those will be claimed if they're considered claimable. So I think that you were probably thinking of it in more of a cumulative sense, but it's per allocation.
Got it. Yeah. So it's more like it's not the aggregation, it's the per allocation. So obviously my per allocation is always falling underneath 50. Therefore, I'm never actually claiming those query fees. If I do want to claim them, if I was to set that threshold to 0 or just turn it off, I would have a transaction per allocation settlement to process, right?
Yep, and that's
assuming I'm serving queries.
Of course, yeah. The idea of this threshold was to say, it might not be worth it for me to claim an allocation if my gas costs are going to be, close to or above the query fees I'm collecting. So with this threshold, you can kind of say what tolerance you have for an allocation being worth the collection.
Got it. Thanks for your input on those, Ford. I think what we'll do now is we'll turn back to our regular discussion topics. I mean, there's only one of them right now, which is around, what things have happened in the world of Ethereum nodes in the last week. Stake Machine posted up the latest update to Open Ethereum, which was just a hotfix, I believe, for a syncing bug. Personally, I upgraded that. I upgraded my Open Ethereum nodes today to that version, and there was no issues. Anybody else upgraded to 3.2.1?
Judging by the crickets, I guess not.
Any other Node software that people have been looking at in this last week, or any other updates? Patches for Geth, for example. I haven't been paying attention to Geth this last week. No? Okay, let's move on then. One other thing I wanted to sort of put out there as an idea, and I would need somebody to take responsibility for it on a weekly basis, is to have a regular repo watch discussion. So if there's anybody here who sort of keeps a very close eye on the repos, community people that keep an eye on the repos, it'd be great if you could post up, a couple of links to pull requests that we could maybe discuss on the call and get more input from Ford and other Edge and Node team members on a weekly basis to understand what the pull requests, what the features are, how they work, and when we might see them in testnet and production. So if there's somebody who likes to keep a close eye on the repos, would like to take responsibility for that, feel free to DM me. And that'd be a great additional regular discussion topic for every week. Let's go back to the questions. What else do we have? First unlock of curator rewards. So, Stefan, do you want to give a breakdown of the timeline here with or Slim? Breakdown of the timeline right now with curator rewards.
Can you hear me?
Very
you're
low
fine.
volume. You should turn up the volume a bit.
Better now?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, so the first unlock will be on Friday 00:30 GMT time. So it will be like late Thursday night for most Americans, I guess. And Seven has a guide on how to release and withdraw the tokens from by using Remix. So I guess maybe you can share the link, Stefan.
Sure, I will do. I will post it right here in the channel.
Yeah, great. I think that's about it. So it will be every 3 months tokens will unlock. So if any curators are listening in on this call, I hope you'll consider sticking with us and learning about curation. It's going to be really exciting. So I look forward to hear more from you in the coming months.
And I think there could be some confusion because in the official announcement in the curator email that we received, I think in January, it was said that the token unlock will be on March the 17th. So as we have discussed in the curation section of the server, it will be on March 19th, so 2 days later.
Is it possible that I'm not close to the curator unlocks and the amounts? Is it possible that this is a point where some curators might decide to index for a while? Is it that level of GRT that's unlocking, or is it smaller than that?
No, it's way smaller.
Okay.
I think per person goes up to like, I don't know, max of 20k GRT.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
The locked tokens can already be used to run an indexer node. So
Yeah.
I think I've already seen 1 or 2 curators switching lanes, so to speak. But the unlock itself isn't enough for indexing now.
It's a powerful position to be in, though, isn't it? Really, to indexer and curator.
Yeah, well, I guess all indexers have that option, especially when you start to unlock your tokens and with rewards. I think we'll see that in some positions as well. So
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thanks, guys. So the last question I see here is around. Well, it's not even a question; it's more of a introduction. So, Steak Machine, I understand that you have started work on rewriting the Graph Indexer client in a different language. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you've done?
It's very early development, so only status, rules, and cost models management available, but you can see how efficient it instead of Node.js packages.
So is this? I mean, I haven't actually looked at it. Is it a binary, or is it just it's a much smaller footprint than having to deal with npm and everything that comes with that?
It's a binary, also Docker image, so you can use it in any environment, and its size is only about 40 megabytes.
14 meg. The original client?
2 gigabytes.
What language do you write it in?
You can take a look at the link. It's a Golang.
Cool, I do that.
So what are your plans going forward? Are you looking to replicate all of the functionality of ideas for additional features that you want to add to it that would be outside the scope of the original client?
I just thought to get some kind of feedback from the community, but didn't hear anything. So my thoughts about features that status can be expanded to show some kind of Ethereum data. So when you're trying to allocate your tokens, you need to understand how much free tokens do you have on your account. And now you need to go to some kind of explorer to figure this out. And I want to add this information just to be available from the single CLI interface. So it will be more easy to find out the data needed to manage any rules or cost models more efficiently.
Yeah, that would be absolutely amazing if you can do it.
And if you can just allocate percentages of your total tokens.
Oh, yeah.
That would be awesome. That would be so good.
Mm-hmm.
Steak Machine, when does the browser-based node gonna be released?
I don't quite understood.
It's kind of a joke. Like you made it down to 14 megabytes. So like, I'm just wondering when just load up the page and you're running an indexer.
We should use WebAssembly for that.
One button press of indexer strategies. Can you imagine that?
Yeah,
I mean, that's where we're going, right?
Running the CLI on mobile.
That's where we all want to go, right? Eventually, you want a bot on top of the agent that will look after your strategy for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the dream.
It was my first try, so I already have some code for managing allocation from CLI, but there are a lot of logic, and it's just not yet ready. And also, I heard that there is a grant already for guys to rewrite indexer and adding more complex logic for strategies.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of research proposals that have been put forward for that. But it certainly doesn't mean that you can, if you wanted to apply for a grant to do the same thing.
Yeah, maybe I will. But first, I want to get the grants for previous applications.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
For that dashboard that everybody looks at.
Not only dashboard, also about infra stuff.
Yeah.
So if anybody want to add some features and test out CLI, feel free to open an issue so I can track your feedback.
Once I'm up and running on the testnet, I'll deploy it, and I'll see if I can work from scratch on your CLI rather than the original one.
Great.
I have a question. I read that 14 days ago there was a pull request merged that we can now index our own subgraphs. Subgraphs that we get to, but any subgraph. Is that like released in some version now?
I think last
not on
time I
mainnet.
checked on unreleased versions, it wasn't yet merged into a release. I'll have to check again, but I'll let you know.
And there was
about to
also
set up indexer for a friend so that he has something to play with. Would be good to know, so that I don't have to run another machine.
Yeah. that would
I
be
imagine you'd be able to serve requests from that as well if you wanted to, right? Rather than you could deploy the whole indexer stack rather than just the graph node, and then use this token that I've seen in the agent to serve queries to yourself. Well, no, you need the gateway middleware. Yeah.
You could bypass it if you just use the index node, the query node directly.
Right. Okay. So just making direct GQL.
Yeah, the issue is that the agent will like delete any subgraph that it's not in the network. So that's I think that's what the PR fixes or something.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Go
Personally, I
ahead.
think this.
Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, I wanted to say that in particular on testnet, this could be quite useful to have. I'm not sure if I want to do this sort of stuff on a mainnet, but on a testnet, for example, when I'm trying out different end nodes, now we just have the pool together, which is a fairly lightweight subgraph. If I can sideload something else that I know is heavier, probably Uniswap is still available somewhere. That could give me interesting metrics to do really testing of, in this case, of Ethereum nodes.
Yeah.
If you want to test it, I can build a subgraph that will wreck your nodes. Just ping me.
You already did that with UMA, didn't you?
Yeah, it still needs like an upgrade, so it will be heavier in the future.
Completely broke my ETH node, that did. It uses every feature I think available, you said,
Yeah,
Glenn.
it uses everything, yeah. I had a few of those, but it's needed at some point, yeah. While we're in the topic of PRs, we created a PR for the Graph CLI to allow for basic authentication with URL parameters, so user and password. It's not like packaged and released in NPM yet, since there's no new version since they merged it, but it's available on the GraphCLI GitHub repo, so if anyone needs to use basic authentication, it's kinda available.
Would that be something that you allow other people to throw up subgraphs onto your machine, or is that for your internal?
Yeah, so anyone can deploy with a basic authentication like user and password in the URL without needing to use like a JSON Web Token or some other form or more sophisticated authentication. I think Cohen wanted to use it. Maybe he can like give you an example.
Yeah, I use it for custom setup. Usually I whitelist things based on IP address, but the person who needed to use it changed IP addresses like several times a day, so it was really unusable. So yeah, I have Apache as my SSL offload or proxy or whatever you want to call it, and that basically combines basic authentication access method to the deployment of the subgraph, and I also put it in front of the IPFS deployment connection, whatever port it was.
Okay, let's move on to some other topics. I think are we out of topics now in the chat? Yes, we are. Okay.
Actually, I have a question. Maybe you can answer that.
Go ahead.
Have you tried to be locked out because of you make an allocation where the gas is too low, and then suddenly Ethereum just jumps like 100Y in transaction cost, and then you could be stuck for a while until you can like bump up the gas on the allocation? Is there a way to do that? I've at least had to wait for an hour or two in one occasion because I was locked on a low gas cost when allocating.
Yeah.
The easiest way to get over that is to basically import your mnemonic phrase into a wallet and send the transaction to yourself with the same nonce, but higher GUI, and it will basically overwrite that pending transaction with the transaction that you sent with the same nonce.
Yeah, but is that really some kind of security risk in that? Just exporting that key into some kind of
Absolutely.
MetaMask stuff.
Yeah, it is a security risk, but assuming you're only talking about your operator wallet, it's not that significant, to be honest.
Well, it
There
is
is,
if all your delegators has to change to another one because your operator wallet is hacked. So I think that's pretty.
If your
risky.
operator wallet is hacked, you can just replace it with another one. You don't need to shut down
the operator. The operator only has the ETH to pay for the transactions. It doesn't have the GRT.
Yeah, okay, I can change in the address on the contract.
Yeah, you just need to set it
okay.
in the environment variables and then restart the agent, and it will automatically re-register with the new operator key.
That's nice. Okay.
And
cool.
you also have
Oh,
to set a new operator in the vesting contract, right?
Sorry,
yeah.
didn't hear the last one.
Can you repeat that, Sebastian?
I was saying, so you can switch out the operator, like you just make a new mnemonic and then set the environment variables, but you should not forget to also set the operator in the vesting contract.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. Thanks.
There's also some PRs I was looking at earlier today around managing, long-standing transactions in the agent. I haven't dug in to see what the actual features are, but there's certainly more development being, addressed in that space where, failed transactions and that sort of thing they're looking to handle them better in the agent itself. I would hope.
Yeah, Ford is
problems
working
with
on
gas
that.
is part of that.
I know Ford is working on that currently. I don't know what kind of progress he made, but things were looking good.
It's
It would
definitely
be
in
nice
there if you
to
want
have some kind of overwrite. If you could add some kind of parameter in the end of the allocation to like overwrite what it takes automatically from the. Yeah.
I
would be
think
nice.
that was one of the features. I can't really remember exactly what was that he was talking about, but yeah.
The PR as implemented basically just keeps track of pending transactions in memory and queries the chain to see if they've been mined, and if they haven't, it will periodically bump the GUI and replace with the same nonce. But that is still in memory, so that will not persist across restarts.
Right. I mean, this is a kind of an area of focus for you, Chris, right? If you want, do you feel like you want to talk a bit more about what you're planning in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned before that I've done a little bit of work on optimizing the transaction kind of workflow within the indexer agent, mostly with a focus on using functions in the contracts that are not yet implemented, and this results in net lower gas costs. But yeah, just generally work on the agent is something that I've been dabbling in. Hopefully I get a ground for it and I can kind of expand the scope of that and share, more of a target specification with you all so we can get feedback.
Great, thanks, Chris. Okay, looking at my list of additional discussion topics here, maybe some of you can guess which comes up first. GIP 2 or 0002. I think it's worth us having a discussion here so people have a chance to air their thoughts and maybe ask questions as well. So just for the purposes of the recording, for those that don't know, GIP 2 is a graph improvement proposal to fix a issue whereby indexers are not able to currently access their rewards without unstaking their entire self-stake for 28 days. So they would have to halt operations completely, which would impact them as well as anyone delegated to them. The GIP proposes to modify the reward contracts in order to allow indexers to set an address to which the rewards would be sent, and the rewards with the current implementation could be instantly moved there. They would be instantly liquid upon settlement of an allocation. So this has been a hot topic over the last couple of weeks. I'd like to open it up to the floor, really, if anyone wants to talk a little bit about it, has any, the governance process itself, the GIP itself, questions about the process. Open it up to anything anyone wants to talk about on this specific topic.
Yeah, when does it go live? That's my question.
Yeah, asking the easy questions, Alex, as usual. So the timeline is not set in stone. Really, the only information I can provide is that the process for scheduling the next council meeting is underway and it's looking like Monday next week. That's not confirmed yet. And GIP2 will be discussed on that meeting, along with a bunch of other stuff about things that need to be set up around the council. And then in terms of what happens after that, I mean, I can only really refer you to the Radical, where there's a copy of the governance process flowchart, which shows you all the different steps that need to be taken. On the technical side, I was looking into what actually has to happen in order to make contract upgrades. And it looks like it's 2 transactions that need to be made. So that would be requiring 6 of 10 from the council to make 2 transactions in order to upgrade the contracts. But obviously we still have to go through, I imagine we still have to go through testnet. I believe this update is already on testnet. Is that correct, Alex?
Yeah, it's working on testnet for 2 weeks or something.
Okay, so it's out there in the wild if you want to try it yourself on the testnet and provide feedback. I mean, that's as much information as I have on timelines, unless anyone else has any more. That's as much as as much as we can really give in terms of timelines.
Alex, when on testnet, did you try it out? Like, do you have a new ABI for your vesting contract to have a new method there to set a reward address? Or
no, it's basically the same ABI. You send it to the same contract, but that contract routes it through a proxy, and you basically just set a transaction with a wallet, whether or not you want that wallet to be used as rewards destination, or if it's 0x00 whatever, it's going to restake the rewards automatically.
It's not the same ABI.
Yeah, it can't be the same ABI because it has a new method.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, the ABI is different, the contract is the same because the contract is routed through a proxy.
Cool.
I have a question kind of about the council in general. Like, is it intentionally supposed to be opaque, or is that just because like things are still being stood up right now? Like, where do we go to figure out like what's on the agenda for the next council meeting, or like, you know, where is the discussion happening that we can see like what's going on to get a picture? Because right now I feel like there's not any information coming back to us. There's only like little like tidbits here and there, like in the repo someone suggests this, or in the, you know, in the forum somebody suggests this, but there's no like statements, or I don't know, there's no channels open that kind of give us feedback and let us know like what's going on, other than like basically this town hall. So I don't know if I'm not looking in the right place, but is that intentionally opaque, or is that just opaque now because it's like still getting set up?
I don't think it's intentionally opaque. I think it's a matter of people working on so many things at the same time. You know, to give you some insight from my position as a council member, you know, we've had a few council meets already, and I've seen all of the documentation behind the council itself. So there's a lot of structured documentation around the council charter, you know, the process of going through these votes for GIPs. It's well documented. Brandon has got full sets of notions for this, but it's not all publicized yet. And a lot of these specific, you know, recurring council meetings are still to be set up. My understanding is that all of the meetings are under Chatham House rules, and that they will be recorded and made available. And, you know, from my point of view as somebody on the council, I'm constantly deferring right now to Brandon when people ask questions like you're asking, Pat, because it's the first, you know, this is the first go at a governance round, so to speak. And once we've been through that process a couple of times, it will become more obvious to everyone, you know, how the process works, and will also be easier for me as a council member to answer questions with authority, because I can do a lot of speculation, but I don't think that serves anyone any good. I think that's why I'm going back to Brandon all the time right now. This is not a intentionally opaque process. It's a matter of we're building the house right now.
Okay, appreciate that. I'm just trying to, you know, estimate, like, is this a month out? Is this 3 months out, right? Like, there's no way to tell really at this point what it's going to take when it just takes, you know, a quick vote and signing some transactions. Like, it's really not, you know, that hard to pull the trigger on this. And it seems like there's a lot of overhead that is getting in the way of like actually processing the proposal, which needs to happen, you know?
I agree. And that's one of the things that I'll be bringing to the table on the next meeting. We need to offer some kind of, you know, estimation of timelines for this, and also for future GIPs.
Thank you.
I'd be interested to hear what people think about the snapshot process. Do you think it was useful? Do you understand the process of normalization in snapshots? It seems to me that on the, especially on the delegator side, there seems to be a misunderstanding about the weighting of GRT for delegators versus indexers, whereby they feel like they are being hard done by because the normalization basically gives more GRT signal to indexers. And I think that was probably one of the, you know, one of a number of sticking points over the last couple of weeks. So what, you know, does anyone have any thoughts on the snapshot process of where, you know, is it doing a good job? Where could we improve with the snapshot process?
I was not really sure how this is. I was thinking there needs to be an on-chain vote of some sort, and this is just testing the waters. And I also was not aware that there's like code linked somewhere. Yeah, but I definitely expect that that the decision is final right now. What I like about it is that it really encourages participation because it doesn't hurt anyone to. He doesn't have to pay gas for this.
Yeah, it's just a signature.
Yeah, I remember having to vote on Aavegotchi on chain, and the transaction was $150 or something like that. And yeah, snapshots are better than just wasting money on some transactions. As for the weighting of the votes, I think most of the delegators are pissed because not too many of them are voting, which makes me wonder why is that happening? Because they also see they see all the indexers voting on the proposal, and not too many, like they see all the votes coming from the indexers, but they don't see or think that their delegator votes aren't there because people don't vote, and indexers are voting just because they're active, like more active in the community.
Yeah, it's a typical sort of governance problem, right? Where your participation comes from about 10% of your community, where it comes from the 10% most, with the most skin in the game. So it kind of amplifies the feeling, whether true or not, mathematically not true, but that amplifies the feeling of, my vote doesn't enough weight to have any impact on this other interest group or stakeholder group. I think there's a lot of work there to be done on education. And I think Seb mentioned the documentation. I think there's a huge amount of work to be done there, where we're using Radical, which is a very new. We're using Radical, which is a very new distributed GitHub solution, and everybody's struggling to use it. To be quite honest, I mean, I just about managed to get it working myself on a laptop. But, there's no version for Windows, which is a big problem for most people. And there's no external hosting of the repo either. So on other protocols, they'll do similar things, but they'll use IPFS. So as long as you can resolve an IPNS, you can always go to, view a document through your browser. We don't have that here at the moment, and that definitely needs some improvement. I think a lot of the issues with, misunderstanding what this specific GIP really represents could have been headed off at the pass if we, had easier access to the GIPs themselves and people could read them. And one other point on what you said there, Seb, I don't think the intention is ever to have on-chain voting. And my personal opinion is that it should never be at least here, it should never be a zero-sum game on voting, right? So as far as I'm concerned, a vote is just a signal to add to the rest of the discussion. It's not a binding result. I don't know how. Are you expecting that it will eventually be a binding vote?
Yeah, kind of way. It is a binding vote now, right? There's no way that this gets stopped now.
Not necessarily. I mean, it isn't a binding vote, right? It's just a signal. That's not to say that it's not an important signal.
The council has the last word, from what I understood, right?
Yeah, if the council is voting no, then that thing isn't passing.
So the council will be looking at the snapshot. They'll be looking at the discussions that have been happening all over the place, but primarily on the forums, and then their own opinion as well, I imagine.
Yeah, and it makes sense since it's the first GIP, so leaving it for governance when you have less than 10% activity of the actual possible voters, it's probably not the best idea. So having the council take the final word in these decisions, at least at first, is probably the best idea right now.
Yeah, I would agree. And I also think it would be interesting if people have ideas about how to increase snapshot engagement. One of the ideas that I was thinking about was this specific ERC around proof of attendance. I don't know if you've seen this before, POAP, P-O-A-P, where people can, if somebody engaged in Snapshot, let's say they engaged in the very first graph governance snapshot, then they can claim a little badge. It's like an NFT that shows and proves that they were involved in the very first governance process. People love that sort of thing, you know. So I'm just thinking about ways we can
make it an NFT.
Exactly. Yeah, people love NFTs.
Right.
Yeah, basically gamification.
Mm-hmm.
And then hooking that into the forums, right? So you'd have a little badge that shows, you know, that you actually signed a transaction in the very first graph governance. You were there, you're an OG, you were there from the beginning in the governance process. You know, there's weight in that in this new world we're in of NFTs, and I think people would like that, and it might encourage more people to vote.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Well, it might be a lot of work for very little impact. It's just that people don't like to vote, right? They like to shout, but not really confident in voicing their opinion this way.
I don't think it's an issue that people are like giving out their opinions but not voting. I think that everyone that participated in the forum discussion voted actually. But
not
the
everyone.
thing is, well, yeah, not everyone, but most of the people that participated in the discussions voted. So it's that it's like there are a lot of delegators and also priority holders, GRT holders that don't really are active. They aren't active in the community at all. So like they just delegated when mainnet launched and they went and do other stuff. So maybe like I don't know if that's like fixable. If you have like a staking protocol, these kind of things usually happen since some people like want to stake and check it out every once in a year. So yeah,
it's the same problems that you see. You know, you see them on you know, protocols like Polkadot, where they'll have their on-chain upgrades, and hardly, you know, very few people, apart from the validators, actually, you know, get their ledgers out to vote on these different on-chain upgrades. It's the same. It's the time-old problem, right, of getting participation in governance. But you know, this is a new world. I think we need to try new things to see if we can get people more engaged.
I also mentioned being able to pool your voting rights with a what was the word you used, a GRT politician, so you could
protocol politicians, yeah.
So I mean, it is much easier to get somebody to vote on a face and a clear strategy and vision for the future of the protocol than getting them to vote on each and every proposal, especially when it's some of the proposals are rather technical.
I think that's a very good point, and I remember you bringing that up before. We see that already on Uniswap. We see it on Yearn. You know, where there's these websites where you can basically pledge or delegate your governance tokens to the address of a prominent figure in the space who's, you know, maybe you agree with their general view on a protocol. So you just delegate all of your decision-making power to them. It'd be interesting to see if we can do that here as well.
Radical uses Sybil platform for governance, and they works like this.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I understand that Radical does have a governance token, but it doesn't seem to be talked much. It's not prominent on their website.
No, I'm not about token, but about how they do their governance.
I mean, we're talking about the same Radical, right? The GitHub. Oh, right, they're using Sybil.org.
Yeah, so you can see familiar faces there.
Ah.
Oh, so you basically just delegate your vote rights to someone, and that someone is voting for you, right?
Oh, there's Tegan.
Yeah, there is a lot from the graph. That's why dog fooding.
Very interesting. I need to look into this some more.
It'd also be
So this
fun
is-
to have.
Go ahead, Pat.
I was gonna say it'd be fun to have like a voting party, you know, like a new JIP comes out, we have a vote party, and then if you show up, you get an NFT. It'd be a lot like it'd be easy, you know, and we could just hang out and vote and chat and be fun.
Bunch of governance nerds.
I'm all in. Let's go.
Government party with NFT beers. I'm all for that.
NFT beers. I love it. Okay, where are we at? We have a few minutes left. Let's see. Is there anything on my? I don't think I have anything else worth covering right now. Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up on the call? We've got 8 minutes left. Anything interesting you're working on? You want to talk about? Okay. Just having a look. Excuse me. Just having a look. See if there's anything else here worth having a chat about.
Did they mention anything about the new chains? Is there a timeline for that? Anyone know that?
I haven't seen any timelines for any of them. There seems to be a lot of activity around BSC. Cohen, maybe you can talk more to that. I don't know if it's official or is it tweaking, Geth nodes?
Yeah, BSC, there's two things. Basically, I started doing a custom setup with the graph node on one end and a BSC archive node on the other hand, which is powering an info site of a BCS-based liquidity pool thingy. But 2 days after I've completed my basic setup, the hosted service of the graph also announced that, hey guys, we now support BSC-based subgraphs. So yeah, there is both. I've been working a bit on getting different sort of nodes connected to the graph basically. Yeah, one is BSC, and that seems to be working quite fine. BSC is a bit tricky in the sense that it refreshes its dataset quite a lot. But yeah, interesting stuff on the horizon. I'm kind of looking forward to get more nodes connected. So if somebody needs a custom setup, I'm happy to look into it.
So is this why the subgraph versus what's it called, pancake swap is still syncing? Is it just hugely inefficient in terms of the way it's handling data?
No, I think pancake swap MasterChef thingy is comparable to a Uniswap. It just has shitloads of data. And that's why it goes slow.
It's huge, and the blocks also count. Think about the block time on BSC is like, I don't know, 5 seconds or less. And
3 seconds.
Oh, okay, yeah, there you go. And also, what's funny about BSC is that they don't have support for tracing, so most of their functionality is very limited in terms of what they can build, which is funny because like most of the most advanced features on subgraphs are built through the trace API.
That should be true for almost every implementation out there. Like for every other chain, they mostly for gas, except maybe of Ethereum Classic, and they always select the traces. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yep. But you can build subgraphs without traces. There's no issue with that, but you have
it's just more
basically a limited.
Yeah.
You have a limited toolset. That's basically it. You might not be able to deploy something like a NUMA subgraph there, but you can deploy some basic subgraph or even quite complicated ones. But as long as it's all handled in events or blocks. But the thing with BSC on already other fast networks is that you need to have a pretty efficient code, or at least a pretty lightweight code, since their block times are quite lower than Ethereum. You need to make those handlers faster, or else you will basically keep on indexing forever and never reach block. Yeah.
Never catch up. You're stuck in a loop.
It's not a loop, but you will never catch up because you process information as fast as it's being spitted out at you. So.
never hitting the chain head.
Or you will take a really long time. Let's say that your handlers like take half a second and the block time is like 1 second. Well, you will process half of the information and there will be a ton sheet of information available for you to index again. Keep on indexing for a few days at least.
How can you speed this up? Just buy faster hardware?
It depends on the features that you're using, since if it's intensive on the ETH node, or rather the Geth node, it will be bottlenecked by that node. And if it's like really intensive in math or calculations, you might be able to speed it up with more hardware, but it's not something like you will always get faster indexing by throwing, I don't know, an Epic processor or whatever.
But that kind of brings us back to the need or the desire to have the performance workshop. I would really love to see that. I've been waiting for that for quite some time, and there's always this question of efficiency and performance and identifying the bottlenecks. And I would assume that in running 2 or 3 years, those that serve knowledge in the graph present, but it's sort of, yeah, I would really love for that workshop to happen.
Or multiple workshops in that case, because like I don't think we can cover everything in one single workshop, but hey.
No way.
Yeah.
We get an entire session. I mean.
Yeah,
also determining where the bottleneck is actually depends on how the subgraph is implemented and what's basically stopping that subgraph from indexing faster. Most likely it's the ETH node, most likely.
So there's a need to sort of focus on, take your biggest impact subgraphs like Uniswap and focus on that as part of a performance engineering exercise, really.
And I think, not just kind of look at majorly, inefficient or high compute requirement subgraphs for them, but rather, teaching us how to fish. Like, what is the methodology for moving through the layers in the stack and identifying the bottleneck, and then being able to apply that to whatever subgraph is being problematic.
Yeah, and that's the message I was trying to get across with the Agora workshop as well. There needs to be, the outcome needs to be that people come out of that feeling like they understand the process. Theory is great and all, but it's actually getting your hands dirty, which generally helps you understand the process.
Exactly.
Okay, we've hit the top of the hour, guys. Thanks everybody for joining today. Thanks for everybody who has contributed. Just to remind you, the next or the follow-on office hours will always be anchored to 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific time. So just keep a note of that for your own diary. And we'll see you all next week. Thanks.